3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Project Khichdi. 10 episodes, man.
Yeah,
We
and
made it.
this one was like, we have gone through so much before like finally being able to come to this, which is why the delay. Either sickness would come in the way or like some other reason. And yeah, we're finally very happy to be
We've
back.
been. Yeah, we were down with the sickness, but now we're
Yeah,
back.
and like the idea for this episode
Yeah.
came from a very random sort of thing that I shared with Aditya today itself. It's actually a very spontaneous episode, if I'm going to be honest. Wherein I
We had a lot of plans for
Yeah.
this, but we really didn't anticipate how we got to this point.
Like originally
Did
we
we?
had planned this to be like a special feature because like we made it to 2 digits and that's like a milestone for us to celebrate. And so like we wanted to actually do it live for the first time, like face to face, But I guess we'll keep that for later since that's not feasible for us right now. But coming to
Yep.
what actually triggered this idea, it literally got triggered like just a few hours ago. Like since a few hours from the point that we are recording, wherein like basically
quite literally,
I just like disclosed a very random detail about my life to Aditya, which is that my dad's taking up piano. Like he's planning to learn the piano right now, and I'm genuinely very excited for him. Obviously, because like I'm in general like sort of very happy to have like another family member to like sort of to jam with eventually in the future if like sort of he sticks to it.
Yeah.
But then there was like this like brief sort of interaction wherein that I had with my parents, where my dad was like he wanted to figure things out by himself, learn the piano online, and like sort of just use online resources at his own pace and comfort, whereas my mom was pretty like hell-bent on like sort of getting him an instructor. And like I kind of was like if you have never sort of touched an instrument before or have any background with music theory, then I guess an instructor would be beneficial like at the very beginning, but later on it could be the person's choice whether they want to take an instructor or do it intuitively, as Aditya would put it. So I brought this up with Aditya and like he had some opinions.
Yeah, I kind of had the opposite opinion, Robin. I kind of figured, being somebody who's kind of created things very intuitively, since I started creating things, I can, like, I know for a fact that for some people, simply doing something and figuring it out along the way is the best strategy, and obviously not to say that I haven't used tutorials, I haven't used instruction before. I learned the drums, I learned the guitar
Through instruction, right?
Through instruction, all through having a teacher teach one-on-one, actually. So I've had, in my opinion, the best of both worlds, but still sort of I feel what works to my advantage is to do things kind of on my own, and then maybe then pick up a lesson or two. That works best for me, because then the focus is less about mastering the tool, right? Which is in this case the instrument, or in this case maybe even production software, for example. And it becomes more about focusing on the concept of the idea, which works great for me because I'm a bit of a scatterbrain and I love doing anything and everything. I love coming up with funky ideas. I love creating things, and so anything and everything around me is that I used to make things are just tools. So
Yeah, but like for me, I'm on like I wouldn't say I'm on the other end of the spectrum, because I also believe in like intuitively figuring your way out. But then also like I'm a methodical person, at least in some regard. I like structures, and I like to like sort of have this feeling that I'm getting somewhere when I'm like sort of seriously investing on like a craft. And like again, like just like Aditya, I have also seen both sides, which is being like with an instructor and also not with an instructor, like just figuring things out by myself. And I'm not saying that like necessarily like one has to be superior than the others, because there are a lot of people who are self-taught and like are extremely good at their own fields.
Yep.
Take James Hetfield for example from Metallica. He's self-taught. Or like Tim Henson has like a bit of mix of like being self-taught and like some partial instructions here and there. But large and like sort of at large, I kind of like the idea of, sort of feeling that there is someone who's keeping me accountable, firstly, and secondly, like, who knows my style of playing, and on that basis is recommending things or challenges, knowing my capabilities. Like, there's no one who, like, if you're doing it entirely by yourself, then it's kind of like you choose your own challenges. I feel like it's very easy to either take up something too difficult and feel demotivated, or take up something too easy and just lose interest because it's not challenging enough. Whereas like with external input, you could probably get like a good balance and like a regimented step-by-step way of like, sort of gradually increasing difficulty, which will keep you interested and also give you like the logic of how the instrument works in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a tried and tested way of learning something. I mean, that's kind of the method in school. It's the method with even the kind of music schools I went to and took classes at, and the stuff I've done. That's kind of the method they've used. It's to sort of give you a foundation to build upon and sort of take in your own direction. But I feel the opposite is also interesting. And actually, I kind of want to delve a little bit into, not delve, but kind of talk about a couple of artists I can give as examples of, I guess, who've kind of worked in both worlds, kind of similar to me. So, Robin, you mentioned Tim Henson.
Yeah.
We were talking about Tim. I think another artist, I think, is a fantastic example of, having done both, having gone through the tried and tested method of studying under a tutor, and then after that having sort of broken away and done their own thing. And I think that's the key point I want to bring about, which is it's about doing your own thing. So let's take an example. So in one of the episodes, I think, was it episode 5, which one did we do the reimagining artist? 6, right? Yeah, oh my god, I'm already forgetting. No, but in episode 6, we talked about how Jacob Collier and Charlie Puth are both jazz artists by training, but have broken away and kind of done their own thing. Jacob is probably the master of harmony, in many respects, and Charlie Puth is a fantastic pop artist. So both of them have really taken their training and then sort of gone in their own direction. They've broken away from a structure. Now, while Robin, what you say is true, having some kind of instruction gives you a foundation that's a solid foundation for you to pick and choose from and do your own thing. At the same time, that structure can be limiting for some. Like I said, in my case, I am a musician first, I feel, as opposed to an instrumentalist. And what I mean by that is I have done a lot of different things, and I like to dabble in things as opposed to be a master in one of them. It's just more fun. I'm built that way, and it's more intuitive for me to combine a lot of different things as opposed to just trying to stick to one thing. It's kind of boring. I feel like it's the same case with some of these artists. You're stuck, for example. So Jacob went to jazz school, and I think in one of his there was a talk he gave. I think it was one of his master classes where he was talking about harmony. In this episode he also talks about microtones. He talks about how the third in a equal temperament scale is actually pitch. Is off pitch. It was a whole talk. Interesting.
Microtones, like just for everyone, microtones is basically the stuff you hear in Indian classical, where like I mean, how should we demonstrate this?
Mike, basically, so in Robin. Pretty sure there's some classically trained singers that are going to be listening to this. You're gonna piss them off. Be careful. No. But yeah, you're kind of right. It's basically a microtone. So I mean, we talk about music in terms of tones, right? In most popular music, Western popular music, even Bollywood and most film music, it's written it's written based on the concept of equal temperament. Basically, the distance between notes in a musical scale are proportional, and it's sort of determined by a logarithm, right? So basically, microtones kind of mean anything in between the frequencies of those notes in that equal temperament scale. So it's kind of, you could say, very marginal pitch changes that may not be completely noticeable unless you pay attention. Point
No,
being
it's
that
actually
the
very,
talk, he
it's
kind of
actually
goes
very
in,
noticeable. But like Western music does not identify them as separate notes because it believes in there being only 12 notes. But like,
yeah,
yeah,
basically.
Indian music theory does not limit itself to the idea of 12 notes, because like in general Indian music is more melody focused. It's not as concerned with
It is.
harmony as it is with making extremely rich melodies, which is what you'll hear in flutes or like in the way Indian classical musicians sings. But
Yep,
like
yep.
so that's why they need more nuance in the way they make the melody, and that's why they can't stick to 12 notes. Whereas
Absolutely,
if you're
absolutely.
if you're using
Yeah.
notes as just building blocks of a bigger harmony, then you can keep things simple, which is what Western music does. They're all about harmony, which is why they
Yeah,
can make do with
pretty
12
much.
notes.
Yeah, that's a whole, it's a whole debate about, what musical scale is quote unquote the best, or most interesting. But anyway, my point being is that Jacob is extremely sort of well versed with harmony. In this particular talk, he was talking about that. In the same talk, he sort of speaks about how when he was studying music in school, he'd try and experiment with a lot of different things, and his professors kept telling him to play simple, play simple, play simple. You play simple, then you can come up with more complex things later. But Jacob, being Jacob, obsessed with harmony, of the potential of sound, didn't want to do just simple. And his logic was the opposite. Instead of using a basic foundation to come up with something more complex, you start with doing completely not necessarily random, but more complex things, and then that gives you more freedom to add in the more
Right,
simple elements later on. And I think it's the same complex. So people who start out with an interest, and I think that's the key thing. If you have a passion, if you have an interest for it, that sort of supersedes everything, right? You start out and you figure things out along the way. You may not be successful. You may not. That's also a subjective measure. But you'll get to a place where you've learned something, and then from that you can refine or supposedly correct your mistakes, right? Based on whatever structure and fundamentals there are in whatever instrument or trade you're doing. And then you can take that and then solidify whatever knowledge you basically have. I can give this for example. So I have played the guitar before. I've learned the basics and fundamentals of playing the guitar. But I wouldn't say I know enough to be able to perform in a band beyond maybe just a simple rhythm.
Come on.
Hold it. I know you. Hold it. Wait.
I won't stand for this nonsense.
I know. I'm not self-deprecating here. I'm just like putting it realistically. I can play the guitar, but see, now I completely forgot my point now.
No, you said that. Okay, to sort of fill you in, you basically said that you can't play beyond. You feel that you can't play beyond like a simple rhythm guitarist and do like simple things. Yeah.
No, my point being, in terms of like theoretical foundation and technical foundation, I don't really have much. Of course, I've been playing the guitar for over a decade. That's a different thing altogether. But I've kind of picked up the rest on my own after learning some basics. Now, with that in mind, I picked up the bass guitar, mid-pandemic, 2020. Now, of course, I did have some foundations in music, but I was pretty much a noob in the bass guitar. And I could have gone to an online class, I could have looked online for a tutorial. I decided to simply learn my favorite songs, and I picked up playing the bass. And that worked for me. In fact, I found them more interesting because I could just experiment and do the things I wanted to do as opposed to doing boring techniques. And then later on, of course, the more I played and realized, hey, you know what, I want to actually record my bass guitar, I started looking up at YouTube tutorials. I started looking at videos, sheet music, whatever I could get.
What, you looked at sheet music
I think
for bass?
There is not tabs. I meant
tabs. Okay.
Tabs.
I got it. I got
tabs.
interested for a second. Like sheet music. Like what is this? Classical bass?
I can't read. I can't. No.
Okay.
I can't play. I can't read sheet. Like I can't read piano notes and stuff. But I did look. I have referred to quite a bit of material over I think since I've started playing, and it's really helped. So I think essentially the point, I guess, the concluding point from all this is essentially the best approach, in my opinion, would be the best of both. Start out with interest, and then you build your way up until you have learned something and then you use the foundations that are already there to correct what's already there, you know, and yeah, then you kind of take it up from your own. You could do the opposite as well, like Robin mentioned. Start with a foundation. If you have, like in your dad's case, Robin, I'm guessing he doesn't really have much of a musical background.
He has the aptitude for
This
it
is the
because
first time?
like he still like sort of is able to reproduce the tunes that he hears. So like I think he has a ear for music, but like he's not professionally trained in any aspect of music. He's never touched an instrument before. He doesn't know music theory as of now. So that's why I was thinking that like instruction at the very beginning might be like a good sort of idea for him, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
It could be. You could start off with that foundation and then build off of that. But see, I feel like the difference could also boil down to, the difference in the approach you take could also boil down to your intention. Now, if your purpose for learning an instrument or learning a particular trade is to use it to maybe create something of your own, then I think starting with instruction might be a good approach. You could also start on your own, but I mean, it would make sense to have some kind of training to sort of direct you and help you, discover your vision. Of course, again, subjective, could be different for everyone. But if your goal is just kind of to mess around, maybe play your favorite song, write something cool, it's like a pastime, then I think learning, like personally at least, learning on my own just sounds, just sounds
I think
fun,
a lot. I think a lot of it depends on the instructor also.
It does.
Like sort of a good instructor might actually allow you to explore your musical tastes without sort of making it too regimented and only focusing on, like, I remember my instructor would say that don't train to be a guitarist but train to become a musician, which is very similar to the point that you made earlier on in this episode itself.
Exactly.
And like if you have like instructors who are truly sort of like interested to see where you want to go instead of like just putting their way forward and what they think is best, then I think even with an instructor you will have the freedom to like sort of find your own voice and find your own sound. So like it also whereas there could be other instructors which might actually set you back by like sort of forcing you to learn tunes that you don't even want to learn, and like sort of making you do things in only a certain way. So it kind of depends on the instructor also in some ways.
It really does. Actually, it's actually interesting you brought that up, because I was just thinking, I mean, we again were speaking about this off call, but it's I mean, like, okay, when I grew up, like my mom was the one who put me for guitar lessons at the start, right? I'm guessing it was your parents also that said, hey, you know what, take a piano lesson, right? As a kid. So like I don't know how it is for everyone, but I think it's like a thing with Indian parents where, the moment you find out your kid has like a special talent, you put your kid for a class. And the goal of that class is not to fulfill your creative potential necessarily, at least completely, but it's to ace an exam.
Oh no.
Because even so I'll admit, while I did a lot of drumming, like the end result of all of that aside, I'm saying my musical pursuits aside, was to finish and get a certification in grade 8 Trinity. Right, I did that, and I mean, there's so many examples of, kids who've just become prodigies in these instruments, because like it's such pride it's pride for the parents, and be like, hypothetically speaking, it's a huge thing on your CV, right? Oh wow, you played in a conservatory for 8 years.
It's kind of similar, like, for my parents also, actually. Like, not the exam part of things. I don't think my parents really cared about me giving exams. That came more, this was back when I used to learn the pianos, long back actually. That was more coming from my instructor, but my parents were more about, oh, you will play in a church. Like, piano is it's a very Christian friendly instrument. Everyone likes to hear the piano with Christian gospel. Christian hymns and lyrics,
exactly. Yeah.
So, like, my parents really wanted me to play at the church, and there were some people in my building who were also learning the piano. So they were like, "Oh, okay, like learn it." And basically, whenever guests would also come, then they would want me to play some things for them.
it's completely for like there's a hidden agenda. It's like it's a means to an end. Yeah, play for this thing, practice for this, play for the guests.
Obviously, like I'm not trying to say that was the only thing that like our parents wanted. Obviously, they also wanted us to have fun
Obviously
with it.
not,
I mean, like, not to like paint a bad picture or anything. Obviously, they wanted everything, but the thing is, a lot of these messages kind of get internalized sometimes, wherein like you sort of start to pressurize yourself to like playing in a certain way,
perform
because
better,
like when I took up the guitar, for instance, the guitar, like the piano was something that my parents really liked. The guitar, like my parents took some getting used to. So it was like with the guitar, it was like me, and like I am doing this because I actually want to do it in the sense that, not that I didn't want to play the piano, that's not what I meant, but more like it was more self-driven and more intrinsically motivated with the guitar, I feel, because like I did not have as much of sanction from my parents as I had for the piano. So like I had to like sort of explain how the guitar works, and like sort of get them to appreciate guitar music over time, as opposed to piano, which they were already pretty open-minded about, because it's very much revered in the church as well. Nobody plays the guitar in our church, at least nowadays I see churches where guitar is also played, but like in our church, guitar is not played while the service is going on, right? So that's why like it took a little more time.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, but like now they are sort of they've grown to liking it as well. Yeah.
So I think it's as similar as like I can relate. Like obviously, like I said, my passion for music grew over time, and I discovered something, and I took the skills I learned, and I used it to further my art. And so I know for a fact my mom did her like level best to put me in as many extracurricular activities as possible. Football, cricket, swimming, music, art, anything and everything. Like,
so relatable.
And I'm appreciative.
So relatable.
And I'm appreciative of it because I have so much I like and like to do. So I'm never bored that way, right? I don't have things like if I have to start something, I can start something. And I really appreciate that. And like, but personally in my case, there was a passion associated with it, which helped it sort of, and so the skills I built kind of helped it prosper. I guess what we're referring to is a more generic case, of like I'm sure like there are examples of very overly strict parents and family scenarios where the music is kind of the means to an end of, play because there's a certain prestige that comes with it, or because this it's good on your CV, or things like that. So, and that can be kind of a demotivator. Whereas in those situations, the instruction is particularly geared towards something. I think that's a criticism that some people have with learning classical music or learning jazz, for example. Like we mentioned, Jacob Collier, another artist I think had a similar trajectory is Yvette Young. Yvette Young is a fantastic guitarist. There are a lot of people that have started playing the math rock / prog rock style of guitar. There's so many of them, but Yvette's one artist that in my opinion, like, does a really good job of making things very melodious, very soothing, very ambient music, and I really like her stuff. And Covet's also a good band. I personally like her individual music a bit more, but go check out Yvette. But Yvette grew up playing, I think, piano, classical piano or jazz piano, something like that, and started playing from the age of 4. Is it piano or violin? I think both. I'm not sure. No. It was piano. Yeah. So classically trained from the age of 4, and would practice 3 hours a day, every day. And then, like, eventually that pressure got to her, and she was hospitalized. And then it was there she rediscovered her interest for music through the guitar, and she self-taught, completely self-taught.
That's very interesting.
Right? Which is fantastic. Yeah. So, I guess the conclusion or the summary of all of that is, obviously, let's get it aside. It's subjective, depends on the person. But like, I think the best approach is just a balance of both. It's got to be driven by an interest. You got to have a direction in mind. You got to be willing to try things, and you got to use the instruction and tools available to guide you in that direction. I guess. Yeah. Wow. I feel like an old artist. Like I feel like someone who's completed my career. I'm giving all the youngsters.
Yeah.
All the hip kids advice on how to make it
Lol.
in the industry.
But like there's
Lol.
another thing though, like unfortunately classical music and jazz music have like this bad reputation of it being extremely strict. You see movies like Whiplash, where like the instructor literally
Whiplash was an exact.
the person literally throws like a chair or what, like something on the drummer, and
Yeah.
like you sort of hear stories of how
Are you rushing
dragging,
or are you
yeah.
dragging? Robin?
well, we are rushing because we are near the end
answer
of
me
the
now.
episode.
Are you-
And we are rushing because we are near the end of
I
the
thought so.
episode. And I'm just saying,
I thought so. You weren't cut out for this. I knew this entire time you weren't cut out for this.
then
Sorry.
then so that was one thing. Then the other thing is just like you sort of you hear of like other incidents wherein like you hear of like musicians hitting their students because they don't play correctly, or because they looked at the fretboard once and all that. And I thankfully, like, my instructors were never like
Yikes.
that, and I am very, very grateful.
I don't think my parents would have been okay
but
with
like
that.
I've heard like in some places people are like that, and I'm like, these things are like, it sounds so sad. Like, yes, you might actually become extremely good at your craft, but you might end up hating music, you might end up hating your instrument. And
Which is the worst
and
situation.
I feel like unfortunately classical music and jazz music, because it has so much nuance in it, and like there are some people who gatekeep it so much that, oh, you cannot truly appreciate jazz or you cannot truly appreciate classical music unless you know it. There are, because of these people, it has like a tainted reputation. But if you just get into it because you like classical music or because you like jazz music, then you will actually eventually enjoy it, and love it for what it is.
Yeah, I think the best example would be, what is it, Two-Set Violin on YouTube. Or there's that, no, like forget like Western classical, even within Hindustani and Carnatic, there's so many. Like we have a professor at our university, right, who has been singing Hindustani for 40 years. Now, sure, you can do 40 years of singing purely out of, you've done it before as a kid, so you're doing it now. But 40 years, that's passion and that's interest, and the art form has retained itself. That's fantastic. I think that's really all it boils down to. Yeah, interesting conversation. Like it's kind of always a debate of what should I do? Should I listen to the bald man on YouTube that's telling me to, buy his course and learn an instrument, or do I go solo?
No, it's like glad you brought that up. That's like one of the last points, which is that, like, for those who are not about figuring things entirely by themselves, but also are not about having an instructor who tailor makes the courses on the basis of your particular musical style, there is a good middle ground, which are these online instructional courses, wherein the person who's giving the online instruction does not know you personally, but has still sort of made like a regimented course, which is like level by level they'll increase the difficulty slightly, and you basically just learn through the videos. So it's not like the instructor knows you and is guiding you personally, so you have the freedom and space to like do what you want in that sense. But then also you're not entirely on your own, because you still have a regimented course that you're following, even if the person does not know you. So like for some people that middle ground
makes sense. Absolutely. And like, just to reiterate, I think it's important to have a theoretical foundation. You can't play music comfortably without it, I think.
I still am of the opinion that like some formal instruction is useful to at least get like the basics down, and then after that it's your choice on the basis of your personal learning style whether you want to continue with instruction or follow your intuition. So, but like, I think I am
absolutely, and I mean, go ahead. Like, you could even reinvent the basics. I think that's what a lot of the greats have done. Like, who would have thought that you could play slap guitar? Like, okay, it's been around for a while at this point, but like, that wasn't something a lot of people did until the early 2000s. John Mayer especially, and now so many. I don't know,
the thumb slap technique, as they call it. It's
thumb slap. Yeah, so much stuff has been invented by artists who self-taught. and who just did wacky stuff.
My
So yeah, and
my
on that
instructor
note,
would also always say that like sort of like you utilize theory, but like kind of like forget theory when you're making the music. Use theory afterwards when you're like analyzing the music or something.
analyzing it.
It's like a good
Yeah.
combination of both. Don't like just do things because the theory says so, but then at the same time like sort of do not go completely without theory as well, because theory is a good tool to like sort of help you ideate and compose, at least in my experience.
Absolutely. Yes. And so, on that note, we'll leave it
Yep.
open to you guys. Let us know what you think. We'll add a poll as usual. Thanks so much for listening to episode 10. If you've been with us from the start, we're really happy that you stuck around, and we hope to keep
We
creating content.
genuinely appreciate all of our listeners who like sort of have stuck
Yeah,
with us
really.
for so long.
We didn't think this would.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't think this would. Well, we had no expectations of
Yep.
where this would go, and at the end of the day, this is kind of like a diary for us. So, if you enjoy our content, do let us know. Give us your feedback, and if there's anything you want us to cover, yeah, we'll share some. We'll share our contact info. Follow us on Instagram. That's @justcantcreate. I'll link that as well in the description. Yeah. See you next episode.